You know, we're live.
We're live.
So if we like doing this, then maybe we'll actually go live and make it public.
Yeah. And all of the best material was in the part we didn't record. We're
Yeah.
just waffling, and I get to feel
I have
for a
this feeling
second.
we're going to find a way to have some good material.
I just get to feel how cool you feel every Sunday. I just get this little thing, and you get to like have this like whole microphone deal, and
Yeah, you got like the
it's
Britney
nice.
Spears mic going on.
Yeah, I do. Now I feel like Johnny Cash or something like that. I'm gonna and we have Bibles and coffee.
And
I
I have
forgot my
headphones,
Bible.
which makes me feel extra powerful.
Yeah, well, you probably are.
So what are we doing today? One, we're trying to hide the mess in my office. So that's why we're sort of awkwardly
Posed in the
facing sideways and diagonal so that I can uphold the image that I'm organized.
mm,
So I won't.
yeah. What is in all the Chick-fil-A boxes? Just out of interest.
Yeah. Does anyone want some free books? There's
Ah,
some random books in there. Just all sorts of random things.
I love it.
So
So you're
but
gonna, you're gonna have a line of people outside your door hunting for
I've
first
been trying to
editions of.
I've been trying to get rid of these books for a long time, so I
He
doubt
offered
it.
them to me. I was like, I don't want them.
Yeah. Alex
No,
doesn't believe in books,
I don't.
which is so not true. He's like, I wish I had $1 for every time he says, "Have you read
Have
this?"
you
And
read
I'm like,
this? This is a
"No."
book.
I'm like, "Sheesh, I feel like I read a decent amount." But yeah,
Yeah, but if you notice, I never actually say I've read it. I just said, "Have you read it?"
it's
I mean,
true.
I just could be just pulling books out of. Anyway, I mean, we're
We
getting
are
there,
definitely we said we were just gonna ramble.
and just we're rambling.
This is
So
rambling. So one thing I've noticed also, just if this is a hit, well, first of all, that would be shocking. Second of all, if it's a hit, maybe we'll figure out how to make it so that it doesn't look like I can like hold Alex. He's so much smaller than I, because
I did notice that in
I'm
the
like 5 feet closer to the camera and I'm way bigger than you are. So it
yeah,
just looks like this monster over here in the corner. Maybe I'll hide
yeah,
over
I'm
here.
just this small like elf-like creature just hovering in a chair at the back.
Yeah, we'll figure out a better backdrop that doesn't involve all of my messes and all that
If it
stuff.
was a hit, that would be just funny, like success by accident. That's so us. Like it.
Yeah. So, all right. So, what we're trying to do today is we're just going to talk about this last Sunday's sermon, and I'm going to ask Alex some questions about um, his sermon, about the content from this last Sunday, and things of that nature. And then we just may ramble a little bit in between and before and after and all of that jazz as well. But one of the things I've learned just as I've gotten to know Alex is that if I ever want to just avoid doing anything, just sitting down and talking about the Bible with you, like you and I think we wasted 2 solid hours just
I don't know
by,
if we should tell people that.
but I guess wasted. We
Wasted
were
is the right.
talking about the scriptures, but like
Ah,
we just nerd out. And so this is very risky. This went from like, oh, let's shoot a 4-minute video to it's probably going to be,
yeah,
and we're
I'm
both
gonna be honest.
sevens. It's
Yeah,
super dangerous.
talking.
They should take this equipment away from me, if I'm
What?
honest.
Yeah.
All right. So
But who would do that? Theoretically,
probably me or you.
yeah, exactly.
Wow.
I'm not sure we have the strength to do that.
Steve, we need your
Yeah, Steve, come rescue us.
All right.
Teresa will do it.
Yeah, she'll do it. So, my first question is, what is on the chopping block floor? Is that the term?
Yeah,
Is that
I guess it is.
so?
What you
What
need
didn't make the cut
what didn't make the cut to a
for the
sermon?
sermon? And
So
we might need to catch people up just for
yeah,
the
so
general.
on Sunday we got to talk about the opening to Jesus' prayer, "Our Father in heaven," and just really how groundbreaking that was. That he would say to his followers, "The relationship that I have with my Father, I'm somewhat inviting you into it," and almost giving God a name um, that maybe wasn't associated before, and that's always kind of hard for us to understand as modern day Westerners because for the most part we think about God as a name, and really more God is a description. I mean, it really just means creator. So when you think about what it is to name God, to say God is Father, that was a new thing for Jewish people. It was certainly a leap, and part of the reason so many religious leaders were uncomfortable with Jesus and the way he talked. So that invitation in is powerful. It's really poignant. it also for us, I think, comes with a load of baggage. So on Sunday, we kind of talk through some of the ways we might see our own fathers and how that might impact our relationship with God. So we talked about, what if your father is the one who simply felt like he was always grading you? It was always about achievement. What if your father was the one that, on some level, had wounded you? What if your father was the one who had left you, whether out of choice or through death, through loss? All of those different things. Theoretically, that impacts our relationship with God on some level. So for me, the one that I identify the most there is the one who grades you. So there was this feeling of guilt regularly in place when I came to God, because I never felt like I lived up to expectations as a kid. I had pretty low expectations of myself. Other people had higher expectations, and I was pretty bored in school most of the time. My grades were never spectacular till I went to seminary and stuff, and so I think, to me, it bled into my relationship with God. Um, I think that became the focus of the teaching, but there's a couple of other directions it felt like it could have gone at different points. And one in particular is just identity in general, outside of father identity struggles and all of those types of things. Like, what identity do we bring regularly to God? Like, what are the things that we value the most? And so I started to think, I went down this rabbit trail just mentally of what happens. Like, I get to be a pastor at South, that's part of my identity. But what happens when that becomes my primary identity? Well, every time things don't go as well as I want them to go, I get into a mess. I start to question who I am, all those different things. Really, I have so many identities when you think about it that are more important than that identity. I am a follower of Jesus. That's my primary identity. I'm a husband to Laura. That's an identity. I'm father to Elena and Gigi and Jude. And when I focus on those things, in actual fact, stuff cannot go great at work. And actually, my identity is still pretty rock solid. Um, and I think for so many of us, like, we start to get into a mess in terms of our humanity when other stuff becomes our primary identity.
And
Does that
so,
make sense?
yeah, so like so in this prayer, our Father who art in
Yeah.
heaven, hallowed be your name, the identity, rather than grabbing our identity from our relationship with our earthly fathers, you could have gone the message.
It could have just been simply a reminder that when you come to him in prayer, you're not trying to build a list of all your credentials, all of the things that you've done. You're simply coming to someone who accepts you as you are, out of relationship, with no other sort of contingencies. And I feel like there's times where I bring my contingencies, and that's like my access to God. It's like, oh, I did this thing. Oh, I did this thing. Oh, and it's not ever verbalized. It's not written down. It's not even completely processed, but it's kind of lodged somewhere inside of me. You should value me because of these things.
Hmm.
I might intellectually or theologically know it's not a real thing.
Yeah, it's almost like we don't, as humans, when we interact with each other, we don't actually have any earthly relationships that are completely no strings attached, as
Mhm.
far
Yeah,
as love. Like, I love, like, someone unconditionally, no matter what. We don't have a lot of examples of that. And, like, maybe a parent, like a really healthy parent to a child, is the
that's
closest you
probably the
can.
closest you can
But
get.
even then,
Yeah,
the perception of the child,
yeah,
even if it is the reality that I love my children unconditionally, there's moments where I'm like, I said something, like, I'm disappointed in this behavior or something that may live with my daughter's, like, for the rest of their lives. And I'm like, oh, that was not my intention, but
yeah.
because of our brokenness,
And and
so
I,
when we approach God, it's like we don't have a framework for that kind of relationship.
no, we don't. And I just happened to read this article on a news site the other day that said, why do so many parents have favorites? Like, they have a favorite child. And I just think my kids are different. I don't think I have any favorites. They're just weirdly different. But you can see why if our language at times to kids is, and man, it sounds like we're running a parenting seminar now. We've tracked into, like, hey, how to be a good parent. We should put that on the title, and Everyone will watch it.
There you go.
It just like
Well, they shouldn't be asking me.
well, yeah,
Maybe
probably
you.
neither of us. But there's those moments where you say, "Oh, if only you were like your sister," or "Only if only you were like your brother." Oh, your sister did this, your brother did that. You can see why people start to get that complex of like he has favorites. Well, what if my father in heaven has favorites as well?
Hmm.
What if he's far more delighted? Let's pick the person. Carolyn Schmidt, our good friend at South, like, of course God prefers it when Carolyn comes to him in prayer because she's wonderful. Like, what can the rest of us do? Um, and I think that there's the danger there that we somehow feel like God is doing that kind of thing. I've just been reading Brave New World, and there's this sort of everyone is graded. So you have your alpha pluses and your alphas, and it descends all the way down to epsilons, and they're almost like the untouchables.
Hmm.
And at different points, like they're all wearing badges, so you know where you fit in the system. And I feel like sometimes in our identity, we feel like we know where we fit in God's system. Um, he'd probably stop listening to me if you came to him in prayer.
That's funny. Have you read that kid's book? The what is it, Poncinello?
I
You
have,
know what I'm
yeah, yeah.
talking
I'd
about?
forgotten it existed, but yeah, I definitely have,
It's
yeah.
this little kid's book. It's great. But it's a culture where they give out black dots if they think you're bad and gold stars if they think you're good, and they stick
Yeah.
stick them on people. So everyone's walking around with stars or dots and sometimes mixtures and stuff. But the end of the story, the punchline. So
Mhm.
if you don't want to know the end of this children's book, you're gonna have to go shut it
This
off right now.
children's book that has existed for decades, and you
So
just
it's
oh, in
not.
the end, Star Wars. It turns out that Darth Vader's Luke's father as well. Just
Whoa, that's wild. Okay, so we just did that. So the end of the story is like all these characters in this community are like wooden characters, and so Punchinello meets the wood carver,
Mm,
and the relationship he starts to develop with the wood carver. It doesn't give him a whole bunch of stars.
yeah, yeah.
Ironically, it's not that he suddenly um gets all these gold stars and like you're a rock star, you're a rock star, you're a rock. It's actually that neither stars nor dots will
Mm,
stick to him
I
anymore.
love it. Yeah.
It's actually it's not about a false positive identity or a false negative
Uh-huh.
identity. It's just an identity in being created by this wood
Yeah,
carver.
and
So
to do that in prayer, we have to know who we are, and we also have to trust who God is.
totally.
And that, yeah, that requires some knowledge or revelation that I'm not sure many of us have. We bring a whole chunk of stuff. So I think that was definitely one sort of direction that I felt we could have disappeared off on Sunday. I think the other one is that the fun little tension in that verse. Like, so again, Matthew 6, verse 9 is our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. It's a personal name. And it goes alongside the idea of holiness and separateness and otherness. So I think I touched on it maybe a little bit, but I think I'd actually talked about it quite a bit in a sermon a few months ago. So it felt okay, maybe we've been there. But there is definitely that relationship with God that reflects on he's both very close and intimate to us, and he's also very large and distant. And large isn't even a fair term because it's not simply large, it's just not measurable. It's beyond those sort of things like measurements that we would find to be important. Um, and so, how do you help people maintain a relationship with God that does both of those things? Because I don't think we have a really good example of that either.
Yeah,
Um,
like so what you're saying is father, or like you even mentioned Sunday, this idea of Abba or daddy
yeah,
almost has this really near intimate sort of
yeah,
language. Holy, like,
yeah,
and
absolutely, yeah.
what's up with that? All in the same
Hmm.
phrase, like the this massive other world, like it feels almost not quantifiable. So that could have been another
Yeah,
direction.
I dragged Elena up on stage once when she was maybe 4 years old. I had her come out of kids ministry, and I was preaching, and I had Laura send her down to the stage to talk to me like in the middle of the sermon, and we just interrupted everything. and just hung out, had this little conversation. And it was supposed to talk about access, like I was in a position of power, authority,
You
and
don't tell them that because you could still do
I
this
could still do
again.
that. Yeah, absolutely. But
If it happens, pretend like
yeah,
you
yeah,
never saw
but
this
now I'd
video.
have to do it with Jude, which could theoretically be chaos. Like I don't know
Even
that, yeah,
better.
yeah. But the interesting thing is, like, so the illustration works a little bit. It works because I'm doing a role, like I have some position of authority, at least in a church service. People are listening to me talk, and Elena gets to engage in a way that I wouldn't let everybody engage, or they wouldn't feel like they could engage. My personality is, if someone said I want to come and just talk on stage with you, I'd be like, okay, it's fine, yeah, just come up. That's a dangerous invite. Just sorry.
I will.
And Aaron says no.
I say no.
And he's
No.
bigger than me. He'll just wrestle, like tackle you to the ground as you.
I'll play the bad cop. You're the good cop.
Exactly.
I'm the
Yeah,
bad cop.
I'm always the good cop. So it where it breaks down is Elena will probably never see me as her pastor in the way that other people will. So it's not the both and, it's just her relationship is different.
Yeah.
So she sees me as and all of us that have done ministry know that that's a challenge. How do you pastor your spouse? So if Laura needs a pastor at
No,
South,
they pastor you.
exactly. Like, yeah, maybe so, but even if that's true, it means fundamentally they've lost a relationship that in life is important.
Yeah.
If they don't have it somewhere else and they don't have it with me. And so there's all those different tensions there. And I think for Elena, like, she'll always know me as the person that she can sit on stage with and talk. Sorry, wow. Probably never see me as an authority figure in the strict sense. Like, other than just the parental authority figure. So I think, yeah, that breaks down a little bit. And yet somehow we get to navigate this relationship with a daddy, a father, a parental figure that is also king of the universe, who is also holy, is also separate. And yeah, I don't know how you do that well.
Yeah, I think when I pray this prayer, this phrase, that tension of our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. What it is to me is, it's that intimate relationship of a father, specifically a good father, which you addressed a lot of on Sunday. But then it's like, oh, not only is he good, he also has all the strength, all the resources, all of the power to exercise his goodness in my general direction.
Yeah.
Which that's like, there's something beautiful and good about that. It's, like an earthly father, if they want to take away all pain or sorrow, not that God does that either, because that's actually transformative. It's just a whole separate subject.
Yeah, really, yeah.
But God's capable of parenting and fathering us completely and holistically.
And it can, I mean, you touched on it. It does have the potential to loop back into that. He could do all these things. Why doesn't he? And in actual fact, like, sometimes
we've already been going 18 minutes. So should we open that Pandora's box? Maybe for another day.
Yeah, maybe for another day.
Yeah, that's a heavy one. Why doesn't he?
Yeah, and that does tie into the prayer aspect, though, that somewhere Jesus pulls that language of Abba, and that's his language in the garden, where, again, same question, like, couldn't my father send 12 legions of angels? Couldn't it all be fixed? Isn't there another pathway? And then a surrender. And so somewhere the tension is at least somewhat resolved in surrender, even when we don't understand the why of it. And we always want to understand the why.
Absolutely. Any final thoughts, things that, as you were studying this passage, that maybe touched your heart specifically in your relationship with the Lord?
Yeah, I think to me it's the reiteration of that. We get to come guiltless. So I talked about that Soren Kierkegaard quote: "To pray to God is to feel guilty." That was his experience of God. And I don't know that we can decide how we feel in that respect, but we can choose to remind ourselves that as followers of Jesus, we're not guilty. That's our understanding, that Jesus says, really, like, you get to come and you are seen, you are still you, and that language of seen, I think is important. We use that a lot now. Do you feel seen? Maybe sometimes we say heard instead, but it's interesting. Like in an Old Testament story, uh, Hagar, who becomes an important figure as a father of Ishmael, she talks about God as the one who sees me. Um, Coming to God and saying, not only do you see me for who I am, but somehow in some way you see me through Jesus and all that He is. And that's the guiltlessness. Like that maybe has to start with an intellectual idea, but somewhere it feels like eventually the more you process it, hopefully it maybe drops, and we get to subvert that Soren Kierkegaard narrative of to pray to God is to feel guilty. We get to come and say no, no, to pray to God is to be reminded of our guiltlessness, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, so maybe even pastorally, that's a reminder for this midweek
Yeah,
video is that if that's the emotion you feel when you pray, then you probably don't know the Father
yeah, yeah,
well enough yet,
yeah.
and
You've
you've got other stuff going on that's like tainting your
uh-huh.
image of who He is.
And again, like even in amongst that, like sometimes for some people that you don't know the Father can almost feel like pejorative. It's almost like what's wrong with you. The joy there is even if that feels broken, but He knows you, um, and that's equally as important. Um,
Yeah, and He knows you at your highest potential.
yeah, yeah, that's it, which is great. It is good news.
Yeah, that
That's
is
the good news.
beautiful. Well, I could sit here and
Yeah,
talk for
let's
another
we'll
2
just well,
hours.
yeah, see how long we can make
What do
this.
you think?
Yeah,
Should we cut it off
I think
there
we should
or
probably cut it off at 21 minutes and 48 seconds.
fair enough?
Um,
Well, so those are a few things that sort of didn't make the cut for Sunday's sermon. Hopefully, also just good reminders for us in the middle of this week, towards the end of the week,
yeah, I
what
think
took place last
I would
week.
love to close us by praying for people listening and
That'd be
praying for
awesome.
the community. So, Jesus, thank you that you share your relationship with a good father with us. And for people that I've walked that journey that feel to pray to you is to feel guilty. To come to a father is to feel an association with one who left us, with one who grades us, with one who's wounded us. And thank you that you remind us I'm not like those men. And so I pray for that deepening experience of coming to you guiltless, knowing that we are loved. Amen.
Amen. See y'all. So
That was fun.